Welcome back to She Talks Law, a podcast by women for women, where we explore the intersection of law, leadership, and life through the lens of women in business. Each episode, we bring you conversations with attorneys, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, investors, and innovators, driving change across today's entrepreneurial world. I'm your host, Jen Aronson, partner at Hodgson Russ in the corporate and securities team. So let's dive in. For many of my listeners who've been following me along the last 3 seasons, you've watched me grow as an attorney and a champion of women in business. Well, last June, I took a leap and I joined the ranks of Hodgson Russ as a partner in their corporate and securities group. Making the move out of big law was a difficult decision for me, but it's continuing to open doors for me that I never thought possible. In addition to my new job, I also was installed as the president of the Greater Rochester Association for Women Attorneys. And I also was went through a divorce. As a divorced mom of 2, I have 2 incredible boys. So I share all of this, and I know it's quite personal, because one theme just really kept resonating in my mind. On the outside, I appear quite confident. I hold my head high. But on the inside, I really questioned whether I was worthy of stepping in as a partner, or whether I was good enough to fill the huge shoes as the 43rd president of the local Women's Bar Association. Imposter syndrome. It's something we're all too familiar with. So I thought, rather than hide behind this anomaly, let's start off She Talks Law in 2026 with debunking this thing that can sometimes feel so paralyzing and paralyze us as women. But instead of prosecution in our minds, we're talking about giving ourselves permission to succeed, to lead, and to redefine what influence looks like. That's why I'm thrilled to welcome today's guest, Renee Pardo. Renee is a founder, speaker, and a coach who helps women in law redefine success, influence, and the next chapter of their careers. Renee, welcome to She Talks Law.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, Jen. Thank you.
We're so excited for you to be here. So before we get started, I'd like to read your bio and introduce you to our audience. Renee Pardo is a trial attorney and a speaker who helps high-achieving women stop prosecuting themselves for their past, their perceived shortcomings, and the case they built against themselves, and start living the rest of their lives like they've been acquitted. With more than 25 years of courtroom experience as both a prosecutor and a defense attorney, Renee brings a rare combination of legal grit, emotional insight, and lived truth to her message. After decades of winning cases on the outside while fighting so much harsher trials on the inside, anxiety, perfectionism, self-doubt, self-judgment, all things we struggle with, she now speaks to women about the freedom that comes when you learn to feel anything, when you think on purpose and you step into the next chapter of your life with clarity and confidence. Renee is the current president of the Suffolk County Women's Bar Association and on the executive committee of the Women's Bar Association of the state of New York, which is actually how we met. In her law practice on Long Island, she continues to represent clients with the same commitment and compassion that have defined her legal career, while using her voice to champion women who are ready to stop putting themselves on trial and start leading their lives with authority. Besides practicing law, Renee is a coach and a speaker and currently delivers her signature talk, Stop Prosecuting Yourself, along with workshops for women in midlife and for women attorneys of all ages. You've said before to me that the term imposter syndrome can feel overused and limiting. So why is that?
So it's wonderful now that we have, of course, all these fabulous podcasts and we have lots of self-help gurus, and the term imposter syndrome talking about the fact that so many of us, not just lawyers, but lots of people, particularly women, often feel like they're not enough or that they're a fraud or that they're now in a new position and they can't let anyone know all of the things about them that really aren't worthy of whatever it is they're going to do now. That's great because it normalizes it to some extent. But the downside, at least what I have found, is that it's using the term, especially with syndrome, makes it sort of a medical condition. Like one more thing now that women have to be concerned about, right? It pathologizes this very completely human thing to worry about it. So, of course, we all, men, women, everyone may feel those things in particular at times when they step into a new role or do something new. Where it becomes an issue and a problem is if it's so deeply hidden and causes you to maybe step back or not take that chance or step into the new role, right? One of the things that I love is there is a wonderful thought leader. Her name is Reshma Saujani. She's the founder of Girls Who Code. And she talks about something called bicycle face, which is just like this. She says this when she does commencement addresses. And this was that in the late 1800s, people were just getting used to bicycles, and women were taking off the huge layers of petticoats so that they could get from one place to another without waiting for someone, a man, to come help them or to be on a horse, right? And so they were going everywhere. And then women had more independence because of this. And immediately they were talking about a syndrome called bicycle face. Oh my gosh, you get red in the face, your hair gets completely sideswept or messed up. And, there was an issue and women didn't want to have bicycle face. So they really needed to avoid this new thing that was giving them independence. And she likens it to this. I'm not saying that, somebody designed to be malicious or to hold women back, but I think that could happen. And so that's why I don't like that term so much, because it takes a totally normal feeling and thought pattern that so many of us have and pathologizes it.
Right. And acts like something is wrong with something very natural and instinctive. Yes. So what does reframing from prosecution to permission look like in practice?
So it's exactly that. I mean, I guess I think a lot. I still think that I do, like a prosecutor. I spent most of my career as a prosecutor, building cases. I started at 24 years old, trying my first DWI case, in Tarrant County, Texas, which is Fort Worth, Dallas Metroplex, right? And what I realized, and this is until decades later, is that as somebody who I considered myself an anxious advocate. Now, what I mean by that, it wasn't apparent on the outside. Like, Jen, what you described, I was successful. I did well. But inside, it always felt terrible. It always felt like I had to beat myself up, worry about every little detail in a way that an attorney should worry, of course, but in a personal way. And I had that anxiety for years. And I overcompensated for that in terms of preparation and really was in a role where you couldn't do that, right? There are some cases eventually you get as a prosecutor that may allow you to have the luxury of extra time, but mostly I worked in environments that didn't give you that you had so many cases, they didn't give you that time to prepare. So that wasn't always possible. So reframing it means really you need to think about the fact that aside from the external things like preparation, there is an internal switch that you kind of need to think about, that you're going to be okay no matter what. No matter how badly it seems to go, you're going to be able to hold yourself up there with dignity, with your skill, which is only going to grow. And no matter what, if you show up with your best self and focus on what you have to do, that may be thinking about the client, or in the case of a prosecutor, thinking about the victims and the case that you're presenting to do justice, and focus on that. And you're personally going to be fine. You get to go home at the end of the day. That is a way to reframe it. And when you take it from that angle and realize this is normal, you can't let it get the best of you, then your same victory and your same success can feel so much better, because it doesn't have to be so hard to get there every time.
Taking the pressure off of yourself in the preparation is huge.
Exactly. Yes.
I feel like as women, a lot of what we do when we go to prepare for something is beat ourselves up. That's a huge part of preparation. It's fighting all of those doubts that creep in while still trying to show up and be the best version of ourselves as advocates for our clients, and be the best version of ourselves in the community.
Exactly. Absolutely. You can't help having those thoughts, but you have to realize that nothing is done wrong. That's
Right.
just the part of the brain that's trying to protect you.
Right. Yeah. Can you share an example of how a lawyer might advocate for herself the way that she advocates for clients?
Sure. I mean, some of the things that come up all the time. I've now coached, close to, I would say 100 to 150 different attorneys in all kinds of areas of practice. And I would tell you that, for example, an attorney who is even at a big law firm, right? I used to think they have it made. They have so much support. We didn't have that as the DA's office or in the county attorney's office where I spent the bulk of my career. We had to do everything ourselves. Surely these attorneys that have so much support don't have that. And what I found was no. In fact, many of those attorneys had the women had the thoughts, I am at this level and I have to constantly prove myself to be here. I have to earn my keep, right? So when they feel that way, they are much less likely to say to another partner or a senior partner or to whomever that they work with, you know what? I am good with doing this, but I'm also working on XYZ. How do you want me to prioritize this? Just that, even, talking about their workload to get it straight, not even necessarily to deny something they wouldn't want to do because of how it might look or how it might feel. So advocating for themselves would be just even getting an understanding or managing up, so that we call it, to know what's the timeline for this work and is it possible?
Asking for clarification.
Right.
Why is that so hard? Why is that so difficult? Just a simple question, asking for clarification, setting boundaries for yourself, understanding what someone else is expecting of you. Why is that so difficult?
Because we don't want to appear that we can't handle it all, that we're not worthy of this bigger position, that we, need to prove ourselves again and again. That's why.
And I think that this really rings true in other contexts as well, not just for lawyers, but women in business, women in many different industries, really everybody. I mean, that thought creeps in, that doubt creeps in, and it can make you feel like you need to silence yourself when really that's the opposite of what you're saying is what should happen.
Absolutely. It's a very common thing. I think why, obviously I work with lawyers, but why it's so keen with lawyers also is that besides the normal socialization that women get, so women in business, anywhere, that we need to be good at so many things, we need to handle everything, and we need to not complain, right? But we also need to prove ourselves.
I'm reminded of that scene right now from the Barbie movie.
Yes.
Where it's America Ferrera and she does the whole speech. Oh, I love that scene. Anyways, go on.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think with lawyers, I find it even more so, and I'm biased. That's who I work with, but it's because think about our training. So we have the normal socialization, like you just mentioned, the Barbie movie that talks about women in general. But on top of that, what are we taught in law school? We are taught to issue spot, find all the potential disasters that could go wrong, and make sure that doesn't happen. So we do that. We are trained to be even better at what is kind of a negative spin that our human brains do anyway. So when you take those two things together and you're a woman who is maybe in a position in a law firm and you want to advance, or you're an assistant district attorney and you're worried about a promotion to the next level. You want to be a team player. Well, if I say this, or if I say I can't possibly handle this, or what is the expectation here? Someone might think that. And I think that's even more ingrained. But you're exactly right. It's a human condition. It is, we all have human brains, and this is what we're dealing with. But if you know that, and that's going to come, you're able to watch those thoughts and really figure out, do I need to say something here?
How does this show up in different settings? In, the prosecutor's office versus a private firm versus just a regular corporate office? How does this show up?
It shows up in all kinds of ways. Again, I think what happens, even the examples I gave, if you're an assistant district attorney or an assistant county attorney in some sort of municipal position, a lot of times you're worried about how the rest of the office perceives you. If you are going to be promoted, what will the other people that started at the same time as you started think about the fact that you got this promotion? So, they have all of that. Attorneys that are trying to make partner, they have a similar situation. But, it's, and as you said, it's not just lawyers, it's women in business. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons that we feel that way. But why is it so prevalent with women? Probably because of the fact that we're socialized to think that, we've got this opportunity, we can't blow it, and we need to be pleasing. We need to be really good at everything we do. And that just compounds everything. There's lots of ways it can show up. It's not necessarily a problem unless, of course, somebody is really the way that I was for years, feeling inside that they're not doing enough, that they should be better, that they should know how to do something before they do it, that maybe they'll get that. This is something I see a lot. They'll get the next trial or they'll do the next one. They just want to watch a few more before they step into this new kind of case, or they handle it first chair, or maybe they need to see more deals go through while they're at their law firm before they're the ones that take the lead, and they will hold themselves back to perfection. But the truth is, until you're in the messy middle, you're not going to really learn and take it on. You have to dive in. Right? So that's a big thing. And when we hold ourselves back that way to be perfect, we're essentially waiting for a time that's not going to happen. So
especially because when we dive in, mistakes are going to be inevitable.
Yeah.
And it's going to be impossible to do everything perfectly. But until you dive in and actually learn from those mistakes, let the mistakes happen and learn from the mistakes, there's no way we're going to get through it. No way we're going to get ourselves better.
Correct. You have to get to a point where you know that you are going to have issues come up. And the confidence isn't that I'll handle it perfectly. The true confidence is no matter what, I'm going to be okay. I will be a professional and I'm going to figure it out. And getting yourself to that, if you're at, oh my gosh, I don't want anyone to know, I don't really know the rules of evidence, I don't know how to do this, that's a big leap. And the way you do it, if nothing else, is to take baby steps, to hear those thoughts and know this is what a normal brain does, but I don't have to believe it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And breaking it down into little pieces, not thinking about the entire big picture all at once, but breaking it down into small, manageable steps. Yeah. What's one small shift that you think women can make to break free from this over-preparedness, flawlessness mentality?
I love that question because I get this all the time. When I am presenting or doing a workshop, I will inevitably get an attorney, a woman attorney, who will tell me, you know what, it's just the way I am. When I go to trial, and they'll show me a notebook, right, where they've written all of this, they color code. I'm not saying you can't do that, but there is a point when that becomes the overriding. If I can't do that, I can't perform, and almost like a crutch, right? This is just the way I am. I have to do it. And I'll ask them oftentimes, okay, what's the first thing up there? And it might even be something like, hi, my name is Jane Smith. Come on, you know your name. What this is, you're not going to forget who you are. And especially when you're talking about trial advocacy, if you do something like write your name there, your eye is definitely going to go to the page to pay attention to it. You're not going to say it because that is a normal, your brain wants things to be easy, and your brain wants things to not take too much effort. That is what the brain is supposed to do. Nothing is wrong. So if you write it there, you're going to look there. So for instance, when I'm talking to women attorneys that are trying to get away from so much of that, I will tell them, you set up brain anchors. You set up not the whole sentence. You set up little things, and there's ways. That's actually a workshop I do in trial advocacy. There's ways to prepare that will give your brain enough so that if you've got that worry that I'll go offline and I don't know what to do, and it's not just in a trial setting, but it is what I know, so I do teach that. But in other settings too, just enough that when you look, it'll remind you where you are, and then you could be focused. And if you know you can do that, you can handle almost any other kind of situation. right? For me, a big change was I started out as an assistant district attorney. So there's jury trials, right? Misdemeanors, 6 people in the jury, felonies with 12 alternates that were there. Okay. And then I went for a while in the county attorney's office. I had to make this big switch. You might think, well, that's great. You don't have juries in family court in New York. So, that's easier. And I didn't know anything about family court, but the change was you had to do emergency hearings, emergency petitions, where you were lucky if you had 2 to 5 minutes to talk to the witness that now needed to be on the stand. And you could say, well, you don't get that opportunity to prepare. So, it can't be that hard. It's got to be easier. The subject matter was crucial. You're talking about children. You're talking about taking children away from parents or other really serious issues. So I still felt the pressure. Mm-hmm. But years of realizing there's no way that I can prepare like I used to prepare ahead of time for a jury trial. But what I know is how to make somebody comfortable up there, how to get the questions that are going to be necessary. And when I relaxed into, I'm going to be okay no matter what, it may get messy, but I have the skills to bring it all together. That's when I got really good at that. That's when I was able to hone those skills in family court. And, people would say, how did you know how to do that? It's because you were a DA. No, it's because I realized at some point that if I wanted to be really good at this, I couldn't rely on any kind of preparation there. It wasn't possible. And instead, what would make me better at it? And it was just the repetition, the getting used to it, and being a real person that was present, not stuck to a notebook. And that's the kind of thing that I work on. And that could be in different settings. It may be in business. It may be other things that come up as an attorney. Not everyone's a trial attorney. But when you are grounded in the fact that no matter what, you can be okay, it makes everything a lot more relaxed in your brain.
Well, it takes away some of that fear, some of that self-doubt that's constantly playing. I love the idea of having the brain anchors and using those to ground yourself.
Yes.
Because it's true. It's so true. Am I going to forget my name? Absolutely not. I'm not going to forget my name. I know which podcast I'm on. I know what I'm saying. But I think having those brain anchors is a really, really crucial tool, not only for attorneys, but for women in general, as we're speaking and trying to advocate for ourselves, when we're trying to advocate perhaps for a higher salary, if we're trying to advocate for a project or an idea that we have at work. Instead of freezing up, using some of those brain anchors as tools. I love that. That's great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And all of those things come down to, what is the point of what I really need to get across? Even that preparation. What do I always need to come back to? That can be a brain anchor. You're exactly correct.
So we've reframed the idea of imposter syndrome a little bit, but let's talk and dive in a little bit more into this concept of fear and self-doubt, using them as survival tools.
So I think I don't know, I'm not really sure so much about survival as I learned, I think, to not really be so ashamed in my own head of those kinds of feelings. Instead, I realized that in some ways they were my superpower. And as far as doing jury trials, for instance, because I had such an anxious brain in the sense that I could come up with 8 million things that might go wrong, and I would worry about them. That helped me in certain ways, and I'll explain. For instance, so at some point not too long ago, a couple of years ago, right, I was prosecuting felony cases that were special victims cases. They were sexual assault cases, child abuse type cases. And if I had a witness to prepare, a 10-year-old child who has been, unfortunately molested by someone for years or has been a victim of some crime, my brain that worries about everything knows what she is going to be worried about when she steps out there and is in front of a jury and has to explain a child, the most horrible things that happened to her. Now, you might say, well, everybody could feel that. But when you are someone who has one of these overthinking, spinning, anxious brains, if you can really hone in to not yourself, but on the job you have to do, it really lightens the load. And I think if I started looking at it as, I know that when this attorney gets up and he asks her this question or that question, she's going to be looking at me. She's going to be thinking about what she's supposed to say. I need to make her comfortable and feel okay with that. And I got to the point where I realized I could truly have a good conversation with one of these victims. I could prepare them because I knew exactly the kind of thoughts they would have and the worry they'd have. Or maybe they'd be feeling worried about what their family was going to think, or they were worried about what other people would. And when you've got that kind of anxious brain and you can put it to use for your position, your job, for someone else, and it's not about you, not only does it help you, it really can galvanize whatever it is you're trying to accomplish.
Right. And what strategies can women use to recognize and sort of redirect this fear into something that's more productive?
Well, I think that's really a big one that I just described. I mean, when you kind of think about, okay, what am I worried about? And it's usually something about yourself, that I'm going to look bad, that I'm going to feel bad, that I'm going to make an ass out of myself, some way that you're concerned. And when you think about, well, what is the more important thing that I need to be focused on? If you kind of visualize, what the future you, that's one way to do it. And the future you is able to do this. I'm not talking about fantasizing about the future you that's done this and done it absolutely flawlessly and isn't going to make a mistake, but in a way that's helpful. If I have done this and I do it well, what outcome am I looking to get? And what do I need to think to be that person that can do that? So that's one way, really not focusing on what you have to do, but what your obligation is. Like if you're an attorney, you've got an obligation, either for your client, for justice. I'm thinking a lot about a criminal side because, again, that's my experience. But, the civil attorneys, a lot of them are like, I have this obligation. They're spending this kind of money for us. We have to be flawless. There's all these, mission statements about how it's this level of excellence. And I appreciate all those, but you can't take it internally. Excellence just means that you're going to get a result for your client. You're going to do this, but it doesn't mean there isn't going to be that messy middle, that you're committed to getting there one way or the other. So it's kind of making sure you have that way where you understand that thinking confidence isn't from perfect preparation. It's from being that person that shows up to do the job.
I love it. It's kind of a fake it till you make it mentality too, right? I mean, you have to show up. If you yourself internally are not going to believe it, just putting your faith in knowing that this is my obligation to do X, Y, or Z, to accomplish X, Y, or Z, and
not
then act accordingly.
Thing, but yeah,
right.
And I guess the only thing I have with the fake it till you make it, what the difference I would say is, your brain knows if you are telling it something it can't possibly believe. I mean, if you truly are terrified you're going to do something, or you're going to walk into a courtroom, it's the setting that I use a lot to make an example, and you can't go from, I don't know what I'm doing, this is going to be horrible, to I'm going to be learned hand. I'm Clarence Darrow. Your brain knows that that's all baloney. It's just not going to believe it. But one thought that kind of moves you up the chain to somewhere better, somewhere productive that's going to help you would be, for instance, I know that I can at least make 2 good points here. Even that alone is a better reframe than, I don't know what I'm going to do. What am I going to do? How am I going to handle this? I'm going to make an idiot of myself. When it's like, I can make 1 or 2 points. I can make this witness comfortable on the stand.
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure the judge knows 1, 2, and 3. Those small, tiny steps are better than, first of all, just circling in a negative thought. Not because I want you to be positive, none of this talk, but because it's only a positive thought that's going to move you forward. But it
And
doesn't mean
overcompensating. Sometimes people take that and they'll end up overcompensating, saying too much that ends up hurting their case or hurting their position.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so focus on the job at hand. And I don't mean not even the faking it till you make it, but more the, I can at least do this. In your worst moment, if you go to that, sometimes I've told people before, attorneys before, sometimes that thought has to be, no matter what, I get to go home tonight. Sometimes it's only a little bit up the scale, but it's enough to put you forward to ask a better question in your head. Your brain wants to solve problems. Your brain wants to ruminate about something. So give it something good, not what am I going to do? I'm horrible. They're going to figure it out. Because it'll just give you all the ways you're terrible, not up to speed, not going to do a good job if you do that loop. When you just move up the ladder a little bit, the thought ladder of, I can make one or two good points, your brain will look for the one or 2 points you're going to make and it will stop spinning. And that's the kind of thing I practice a lot of times with clients, with my clients when I'm coaching. Yeah.
Creating parameters for your brain so your brain doesn't feel so out of control. So like there's no boundaries around what's going to happen.
Absolutely. That's
I think
it.
our brain is just wired for that safety net. Yeah.
Right. And nothing's wrong when your brain does that. It's trying to protect you. It's trying to don't do it. Don't do that. You got to stay safe in the cave. It's wired for survival, not necessarily success, right? So our brains don't know the difference between, a cheetah chasing us and stepping into a courtroom and having to do a direct examination.
Though it can feel very similar to some.
That's the point. Our brains just, this is bad. Don't do it. Here's all the reasons why you shouldn't. And you have to be able to step away from that. Oh, that's my survival brain.
Yeah.
But I'm actually more advanced than that. I'm going to use my prefrontal cortex, the part that makes executive decisions. But I know I'm going to still hear that survival part that wants me to stay over here. That's exactly the case. You just described it.
Yeah. Yeah. Moving on, before we move on to our next topic, I'd like to hear from you, kind of closing out this episode. What is one thing from today's conversation that you'd really want our listeners to remember?
I think the main thing I would say from what we've just talked about is if you find yourself in a situation as a woman in business, as an attorney, that really has a strong desire to do something different, to do something more, maybe to take on more of what I would say more of an advanced position or an advanced role, but you feel, you know what, I'm just not ready. Maybe I need to do this. If you hear those thoughts telling you why you can't, and it could be anything. It could be, I have too much going on at home. I have other things I have to worry about. Now isn't the time. I'm not saying that that's not necessarily true. I just want you to question it. And I want you to ask yourself, is that just my survival brain trying to keep me safe? And have some compassion. I used to not have that. I want you to have some compassion and go, oh, you know what? I hear you. You're scared for a lot of good reasons. But I really believe that our deepest desires, what we truly want, our true ambition in there is telling us something. And maybe if you really want it, but you're like, I can't yet, the whole world isn't set up yet for me to do this, maybe your survival brain is holding yourself back. And there is a way to get what you want. And you don't have to apologize for wanting that. And you don't have to be ready and perfect to take the steps to go there. So that's what I would offer.
The stars do not always have to align perfectly before you take one step forward.
Absolutely. They're not going to.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you have a quick exercise or mindset shift that women can try right now as they're listening?
Honestly, I don't know if I have a quick one. I think what I would tell people, and a lot of people say this, they want to do it, but I don't have the time. I'm not talking about a long time. One thing that could be really helpful is to empty out what's actually in your brain. So let's say you're getting ready to do some new type of law or a new position or something, and you've got a million reasons why you're scared to death. Without censoring yourself, without judging it, you don't have to show it to anyone. Take a blank piece of paper, and I mean a paper. Don't do this on your computer. There's actually scientific evidence that shows that writing it down, the actual going through your hand, your brain, your hand, putting it on paper makes a difference. If you've got to type it. But empty out the thoughts. Do what I think in the coaching world we like to call a thought download. Get it all out there. Don't judge yourself. It could be, I don't have the right outfit. I don't care what it is. It could be, I'm scared. I'm not paid enough for this. How am I going to handle everything at home if I take on all of those things? And you're not going to show them to anyone. Get it all out on paper. And then once you've written, set a timer. It doesn't have to take long. It could be 3 minutes. 3 minutes of writing, stream of consciousness. These are my fears about doing X, Y, or Z. Get it down. And then when you're done, it's not just to get it out. Then when you're done, look at it. Sometimes when we see the craziness, and I mean that in a loving way. I don't mean actual craziness, but when we see what our brain is telling us that we can't tell when it's in there, but when it's out there, you can start saying, this isn't true. Do I really believe this? Or you could even do the exercise of, why might this be wrong? Look at a sentence.
Questioning.
And this is the pros and cons. And so if you're asking for one exercise, I think doing a thought download. You don't have to do it every day. You don't have to make it your 5 a.m. when you get up and are drinking tea and meditating. Just take a look at what's in your brain and ask yourself if it's serving you. Is it serving you to what you really want? And if it's not, is there something else I could think that's also true? I'm not telling you not to believe it, but is there something else that I also believe that's going to get me to where I want to go?
Changing the channel on those automatic thoughts. Yeah. Well, I really, really appreciate you coming on today's episode. Thank you so much, Renee.
Thank you, Jen.
We are going to be coming together for part 2, where we're actually going to be talking about assertive versus aggressive communication, which I'm so excited about. Renee, thank you for sharing your wisdom and helping us reframe imposter syndrome into something more empowering. Permission over perfection. What a powerful takeaway. To our listeners at home, be sure to visit reneepardocoaching.com to see if working with Renee is right for you. And join us for part 2, where we're going to tackle the difference between assertive and aggressive communication. Don't forget to subscribe to She Talks Law on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Like and follow She Talks Law on Instagram and Facebook. And email your comments and topic suggestions to me at jaronson@hodgsonruss.com. And finally, the views expressed on this podcast do not reflect the views of Hodgson Russ and should not be construed as legal advice. This podcast is not intended to create a lawyer-client relationship, and listeners should not act upon anything expressed by presenters without seeking professional counsel. This podcast may constitute attorney advertising under various state ethics rules, and we note prior results do not guarantee a similar outcome. I'm Jen Aronson, and this has been She Talks Law. Here's to redefining success, influence, and the next chapter together.